In just a few minutes, small business owners can now sign up for Blackfoot Communication Services. Whether it's dependable voice options or internet services, sign up simply by visiting blackfootsmallbusiness.com. Click on the services you wish, select an installation time and date, and you're done. Small business services at the touch of your fingers. Connect to more with Blackfoot Communications and blackfootsmallbusiness.com.
Hello, everybody. Welcome in. Colter Nuanez of Skyline Sports. You can always find all of our great content at skylinesportsmt.com. We appreciate you following along. Appreciate you riding along for this journey. It's been incredibly challenging and incredibly fun to try to build this independent multimedia company, and very proud of all the work that we've done, and we couldn't do it without you. This is our new series where we highlight players to watch, giving you a video element that appears within our first looks every week. We've been doing the first look for the duration of Skyline Sports for about 8 years now, and we just wanted to make the video element a quick hitter. It's a little bit quicker on our end to be able to do it, and also gives you something to watch as you sort of diagnose and look at the upcoming opponents for both Montana and Montana State football. Montana State, they take the show on the road again, headed to Cheney, Washington to take on Eastern Washington. The Eagles, number 15 in this week's poll. Montana State held steady at number 4 despite a 68-28 loss to Oregon State last week. Pretty crazy that you have two teams coming off of games in which they gave up almost or exactly 70 points. Montana State, 68 points, the highest point total they've allowed since 2008 when they gave up 69 to Kansas State. Eastern Washington gave up 70 to Oregon 2 weeks ago, but the Eagles are coming off a bye. The main story there for Aaron Best's squad, and Aaron Best has been there since taking over for Bo Baldwin ahead of the 2017 season, and there's been some great success there, but the biggest storyline is now the program and the team is almost exclusively Aaron Best recruits. Bo Baldwin was one of the best recruiters in the Big Sky Conference, that the Big Sky Conference has seen, period. He also was great at developing talent, whether it was Vernon Adams, Cooper Kupp, Kendrick Bourne, Shaq Hill. They had a variety of really, really good, particularly offensive players. Well, the last great quarterback that Bo Baldwin brought in there was Eric Barrier, and Eric Barrier played his final college football season a year ago. He won the Walter Payton Award. I believe he was the fifth, maybe sixth Eastern quarterback. I know there's been 7 Eastern quarterbacks that have won Big Sky Conference MVP. I'm trying to think of the guys that won the Walter Payton Award for sure. I know Bo Levi Mitchell did for sure. Vernon Adams, I believe, did. And Eric Barrier certainly did as well. Can't remember about Matt Nichols, Eric Meyer. Regardless, Eastern, if you play quarterback there, you are basically the front runner, if not the absolute favorite, if not the guarantee to win Big Sky Conference MVP. Can Gunnar Talkington do that? We shall see. He's been in the program forever. He's been there for 5 years. This is his 6th season. He's got very little action because Eric Barrier has been the dude ever since Gage Gubrud went down with an injury in the middle of the 2018 season. It's been Eric Barrier's show ever since then. And Talkington's gotten in, spot duty when a helmet comes off or in a blowout or whatever. But that's the main storyline, and he is our first player to watch, Gunnar Talkington. And he seems like he's been okay so far. He's completed 61% of his passes, 435 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. He's also Eastern's leading rusher right now, which is not a scenario that they want to continue. For as much as they've loved to throw the ball, they've also complemented it with a great run game. And that's been even further emphasized since Aaron Best, an old offensive line coach, took over. So can they find some sort of production in the run game? We'll see. Other guys to watch offensively for Eastern Washington, they graduate Talolu Limu-Jones from a year ago and Andrew Boston, 2 of the better receivers in the league. Limu-Jones, absolutely one of the best receivers in the league last year. But they still have a couple familiar names. Freddie Roberson has been their leading receiver so far. He's got 9 catches, 124 yards, and a touchdown. He's gotten a lot of action these last couple of years. Efton Chisholm is another guy who has a lot of juice and is a good player. He has a team-high 10 catches, 92 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So those are kind of the main 2 guys. But Anthony Steele Jr. is also a familiar name. a guy that's gotten some run as well. Eastern's going to play a ton of receivers. They're going to throw it all over the place, and that's always been their MO. They also, though, have always had a great offensive line, and part of that comes from Aaron Best. He played O-line there in the late 1990s and then was the offensive line coach for more than a decade at his alma mater before taking over as the head coach. He knows how to find them and then develop them. He's so good at identifying young offensive linemen in the state of Washington mainly, and then bringing those guys up to be all-conference and in a lot of times NFL-caliber players. They graduate Tristan Taylor from a year ago, who was definitely one of the best offensive linemen in the league. But they do the line's going to be anchored by Wyatt Musser, who's a redshirt senior out of Kennewick, Washington, went to Kamaikan High School, which is a power there in Washington. He's played in 46 games and has made 20 straight starts. So he's kind of the main dude there on the offensive front.
The Restaurant Supply team with captain Darian White, Cola Bad Bear with rebounds, Madison Jackson assists, and your shooter from downtown, Leah Beatty. J&V Restaurant Supply, savor the difference.
On the defensive side of the ball, some of the players to watch for Eastern Washington, and this is the what's interesting to me. Eastern's run such a crazy up-tempo style, and they've scored so many points that I think their defense has been overlooked quite often. And they've never been a juggernaut on defense, but they've also really favored a style of defense where they're taking a lot of risks just to try to get the ball back for their offense, whether that means going for a pick or maybe even sacrificing having a chance at forcing a turnover and in exchange for giving up a big play. Because if they give a big play up, guess what? Their offense is back on the field, and that's what they want. This defense is anchored by Anthony Smith. He's a guy that is wearing their legacy number 4, which has been passed on from great defensive backs to great defensive backs there at Eastern Washington. He was their representative at the Big Sky kickoff. Trey Weed is back as a veteran corner who's, I think, in his third year as a starter there. He's a guy that was recruited by both the Montana schools pretty heavily before choosing Eastern Washington. So he's a guy that maybe statistically right now doesn't have a ton of production, but that's probably because he hasn't been giving up a lot of passes his way. Just 5 tackles, but he does have Eastern Washington's lone interception so far this year. And then the man up front to watch is Mitchell Johnson. He has been a starter for 3, maybe even 4 years now. He's been around there forever. Another guy that was recruited pretty heavily by Montana and Montana State. That's a common theme when these teams play. So MSU is going to have some guys that they're going to be going against some guys that a previous coaching staff was after. But Mitchell Johnson is a really good player off the edge. He leads Eastern with 2 sacks and 2.5 tackles for loss. He also is second on the team with 12 total tackles. Demetrius Crosby, another guy that's a familiar name who's a returning starter. He had an interception last year against Montana in that night game as well. So some familiar faces there on the Eastern Washington defense. But as it is across football, but particularly at EWU, it begins and ends with the quarterback. What's Gunnar Talkington going to bring to the table? Can he live up to all of the outstanding quarterbacks that have come before him over the last 25 years there at Eastern Washington? We'll see. Montana State at Eastern Washington on Saturday. That's your players to watch for the Eagles. Thanks so much for tuning in. SkylineSportsMT.com.